off as something different from high-tech avant-garde. And what I think is alluring and very fascinating about this movement is that there's some attempt to try to bring those two discourses together. And I'm not sure if it's going to work. And I actually hear that at Penn, there's the sustainability faction in the architecture school, there's the emergence faction, and that there's a little bit of conflict going on. And I'm very excited to kind of go there and pay attention to that dilemma. So I mean, yeah, plenty of people are looking at Adobe Building or looking at African techniques. There's all kinds of other ways of doing green and sustainable. But I'm just by my own bent, I'm interested in the high tech and the genetic and how those things fit together.
So on the topic of progress, it seems like one of the misunderstandings I run into a lot is that there's this notion of a single pinnacle of progress. If there's one fitness metric, and that it isn't context dependent, that there aren't many fitness metrics depending on what you're trying to achieve. And evolution creates things that fit the niche they're in wonderfully. Dinosaurs, for example, they wonderfully filled the niche that they were in until they didn't anymore.
Well, I think it's fascinating because when you look at natural selection, I mean, that's what it basically argues. You have diversity, and diversity is key to evolution. But what I find interesting is when you switch it over to the design world, diversity is not necessarily the goal because you have branding, you have identity, you have corporate identity as an architect, and in design you have actual mass production. So you get the reproduction of a single style, like Frank Gehry buildings, which is supposedly kind of growing and organic, but yet it's his trademark logo. That's like the norm, where you're talking about actual diversity. There's a conflict
tension
there,
between
but I
those
think
two, I
it's
think,
really
is really important.
Huh?
The tension between the two.
Yeah, the tension is really interesting.
Do you think there's a similar problem if there were like multiple ideas of what progress was, and so instead of focusing on one goal or like changing everything to fit one path, people started changing things to fit multiple different paths, so it sort of balanced out in the end?
I like that idea, but then I wonder about corporate money, because it seems like whoever funds projects, they have a certain idea of what progress is. And maybe they can be that open-minded. It's kind of like, to me, it reminds me of like going back to the 1970s and the communes, when I hear that the Santa Fe complex is kind of a self-organizing entity where you can propose a talk and you can all come together and learn. It reminds me of kind of that model. It's a great social model, it's a great political model, but then I wonder how does it actually function in terms of control, getting things done, making something work, and if there's corporate sponsorship, then it even has more of that bent. So it's kind of a tension that happens on the social cultural side that's in conflict with the theoretical side. And yeah, let's come up with a new solution that makes it work.
I think it is the dark side of globalization, even though most of us are proponents of the internet and other things that have created a certain amount of one world, is that you end up with one solution. It's been really hard to have diversity. So I think we're adding that back into the cultural aesthetic of diversity in a true sense, instead of just the lip service.
The tokenism, yeah, which is really common right now. This is the new architecture of diversity.
Right. Yeah, you can have pick any one of the three things.
It's in Dubai and it's funded by the Sheikh. It's not, happening.
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, I think it's really interesting to look at where it's at.
Yeah, in fact, emergence versus diversity is important.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's a biomimetic building, east of building, Mark Pierce built in South Africa that is modeled after how termite mounds handle temperature control and all of that. And that's an example of, incredible, savings in economics, and it's an accessible building economically. So that's a nice social.
It's great. And earthships have some of the same basic structural properties as well. Yeah. So there are ways to do it that are not. I'm just looking at like where the high tech stuff is going. I'm more interested in the lower across the board stuff.
David, Court, are we close?
Yeah, we're ready.
All right.
All right. Should I move this stuff off?